player comes down, so they're to play football. The one thing you need to play football out of everything is a ball. They need a ball at their feet to enjoy it, in my opinion, and I will always stand by that. I always try to make sure when I do my session plan that I get every player having at least 100 plus touches a session. Whether that's for the first field, pure ball mastery, get them on the ball, everyone has a ball if I can, maybe in twos, get loads of touches, and then of course, I'll always move on to maybe a tactic defence drill. Of course, it's not always going to be ball mastery all the time, because then it gets a bit like, okay, we need to goal orientated. But I like to get them loads of touches first, because I think then they always come away from the session going, alright, if I didn't get a lot of the ball in that tactic defence, at least I've had that time with the ball.
Good morning and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Phil Sargent. I know he's eagerly been anticipating when the episode is going to be released. He's been patiently waiting, and now here it is, Phil. It's out ready for you. I had such a great time chatting to Phil, and upon that time since, he has been nothing but supportive, nothing but sharing posts, commenting, retweeting, looking at the other episodes that are coming out. And he has been such a great advocate in terms of that support and that connection that has been built through the podcast. And I really appreciate it, Phil. It hasn't gone unnoticed, it hasn't gone unrecognised. And I really do appreciate every time you like, comment, retweet, etc. But in this episode, it was great to talk to Phil, someone who's on his coaching journey, who's continuously learning, who's going from working with adults to working with kids and sort of doing that different loop around, whereas sometimes you might progress from kids to adults depending on your journey. But it was great to speak to Phil and how he might adapt his coaching methods from adults to children, and how he might not adapt it in terms of what he's doing, but might just make little tweaks along the way. And then he gets to build his overall coaching profile, his overall coaching experience. He gets to improve on certain elements, as you do, and we're always constantly improving. Phil's a very good coach. And there's a lot of very good coaches out there, but we are constantly improving, and we're always going to learn and do things in different ways. And it's going to be interesting to speak to Phil, as I said to him during the interview, that we'd have to do another episode a few months on after he works with children and young people, just to talk about this journey and how much he's learned, and whether the takeaways have been what he's expected since having this conversation. And that way we really get to reflect on that coaching journey. It's good then to have 2 episodes and that contrast in terms of what really reflects the Reflective Coach podcast and what this podcast is all about. But Phil is full of energy, full of life. He's constantly learning, and I really enjoyed the fact that he threw questions back at me, and it was a really good aspect and consideration to have whilst doing the episode and the interview itself, and having that discussion, and it really got us thinking, and it created that learning platform, as I feel with every interviewee that I have on. But it was great to have questions thrown back at me and be put on the other side, and I really enjoyed that. I had such a great time speaking to Phil, and he was such a wonderful interviewee. We talked about session planning, types of players, their personality, meeting their needs. We talked about modernisation in terms of coaching, so plenty of ball mastery, getting a ball at their players' feet, constantly getting touches in, developing skills and a skill set where they can really then transition and apply that in games, rather than your typical running around the pitch as a warm-up, and just constantly getting those touches in, because you might not have the most technical player who might play in an SSG, for example, and therefore because they're not the most technical, they might receive the least touches. So maximising on touches at the start for a ball mastery as a warm-up will really benefit them in terms of that contact time, that ball control. And if you do it over a period of time, i.e. over a number of weeks, you're going to see a real progress in terms of that ball mastery and that connection with the ball. We talked about starting out on his coaching journey, that continuous learning that he's going to go through, his thoughts and feelings upon how next season may look and what his expectations are going into coaching the team, how he wants the team to look, and how he wants the stakeholders such as parents, carers and family members to buy into what he wants to do. And part of his philosophy, and I completely share this philosophy and have been there in terms of where Phil hasn't been yet, and have been able to share that experience, and that's why I really enjoyed having this conversation with Phil, is that Phil has a nurturing sort of background and philosophy, and that's what he wants to really apply to his players that he's going to be working with. So we had a great discussion about how players can be limited to one position and may only play that one position. But we talked about the importance of exposure to multiple positions. So a goalkeeper having a chance to be an outfield player and an outfield player being a goalkeeper, and not limiting players. So, this player's always been a left back, he's going to stay at left back. Well, he could be a left wing, or he might just filter across the centre back, or he might end up being a striker. And we talked about that importance because, look at how many professional players started out in one position and then ended up being a professional footballer because they ended up playing a complete different position. And one of the biggest examples is Petr Cech. He started off as a striker, and look, he went on to be one of the greatest Premier League goalkeepers of all time. And that just shows the importance, and especially now in the modern day, we expect the goalkeepers to be playing as an outfield player, and we may have a shortage of players one day, and therefore we need to have players who could be willing to step up and be that goalkeeper. I know I have it with my under-19s now. We've been very reliant on having one goalkeeper all year long, and we were very fortunate whereby he's only missed one game this year. But it led to our left back stepping up to being the goalkeeper because he had the ability over the years where he has rotated and been in those positions. So I'm glad that Phil is going in with the expectations of rotating players and the exposure to different positions, and parents have to buy into that. And if they don't buy into it, then obviously you might see players move on and parents look at other clubs, and that's a sad thing. But Phil really understands that at times we are going to lose players and we have to let them go. And if they're going into other coaching environments, but he's nurtured them, he's supported them, he's given them every opportunity, and that's upon their choice, then he's happy to see them go upon their own decision and is supportive of that. It's not like he's pushing them out of the door. He is happy that they're going, he is supportive, and if they wanted to come back, the door would be open. There wouldn't be any burnt bridges. And that just shows the long-term player development plan that Phil has in place and what he's thinking about already, and the support that he wants to give players. And that comes into embedding expectations, and we talked about the importance of environments and being the product of an environment. So how characteristics and habits are developed by who we see around us, where we're training, where we're playing, where we're growing up, where we're learning, and that environment is really important. And so Phil wants to go in and create the right environment where players can develop those right habits, those right characteristics, and if they decide to move on and go to other clubs, then they're renowned for having those habits and characteristics from the work that he's done with them, or he's embedded them into those players. So when they're going on and continuing in their pathway and platform, they may not look back and go, Phil done this or Phil done that, but he can see that reflecting in them. And realistically, for him, he knows then what he's done as a coach, and he can be happy with those outcomes, and it just shows the importance of what he has been doing, whether it's been recognised by the parent, carer, other stakeholders, or so on. And that's where sometimes, as coaches, we don't always get the biggest, comeback, the biggest thanks, the biggest positivity, but it is great to have that support in terms of your own mindset of understanding that it's not always going to be that way, but if you can see it and know what you've done, then you can be happy with it. We then spoke about impact in small communities or through small communities, and that was really talking about, if we're working in a certain type of environment and having that community of players, having those connections, having those relationships, then are we impacting the players by having those good characteristics, by having those good habits, by supporting one another, by having those key relationships, by getting players to come together even when you're going through a losing patch and you may be on 5, 6, 7 weeks of losing, but you stay as a real community of supporting each other and coming together in training, being positive, and still seeing players turn up for training, wanting to play for games and trying to get through that bad patch. Now there's so much you can really reflect on that in terms of impact through small communities, and there's so much more which I could say on that. I can make an entire episode about it, but this is only supposed to be an introduction. But it was so great speaking to Phil, and I'm so appreciative of his support and his buy-in, and where he's really given me the time and commitment. So it is a big thanks from me, Phil. I hope for you, in terms of the Reflective Coach podcast community, I hope that you drop a like, drop a follow, drop a subscribe, leave a comment. It is really appreciated. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have. Continue with your learning journal and take so many notes away from this. There's going to be a few shorts coming out, so nurturing players, positions and rotation, the tree analogy, which is going to be a great little short, and there's going to be another one about things that Phil didn't enjoy, and I'm looking forward to getting those out over a period of time, so make sure you listen out for them during this episode and really note them down and look forward to them. But you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Anchor and Podcast Addict. You can also find the podcast on Twitter and LinkedIn. It's at TRC Podcast _ on Twitter. It's Reflective Coach Podcast everywhere else. I'm Anthony _ Luca 96. Again, drop that like, drop that follow, drop that subscribe, leave a comment. It is going a long way and I really appreciate it. But enjoy this episode. This is Phil Sargent on the Reflective Coach Podcast.
Yeah, it's alright. It's been working that, but yeah.
Yeah, which is good. So, yeah, it's been all right. I work in education. I work in secondary with a lot of behaviour, a lot of inclusion. So I'm constantly around young people and sort of within that sort of background. So I'm never away from them really, and every day is sort of different and challenging. But yeah, it's been all right.
Oh, good.
So I rate your pop vinyl and the football there, by the way. Can I just say?
Oh yeah. It's the goal of the season ball, that, yeah. So, won that 4 years ago? Yeah, so that was good, yeah. Good goal.
Yeah, it is, and I love the Nike ones over the years. I know my mate used to buy them every year they come out, and he'd always have a brand new one. And I'd rather let him buy it because it used to get launched over the fence and stuff where we used to play.
God. Countless balls lost over the years.
Honestly, mate, if he put them all together, he'd have like the most historic collection of balls, but then all the money he spent on them, he's lost for them.
I was actually looking at World Cup balls, just because obviously the World Cup was on, wasn't it, at Christmas, and you get the nostalgia, don't you? And I literally just looking at like the ones from 2006, 2002, and I was thinking, if you kept that, how much it'd be worth now?
Absolutely. Just little things like that pass us by where we're sort of living in the moment. We don't see like things that we could have had or could have kept. And
100%. I've actually got my first ever boots, like proper boots. I had some like Patrick boots, I think, when I was just first getting into it. You know, as a parent, my mum didn't want to commit until I was committed. But yeah, I've got some Vapors. I've still got them somewhere. I'll show you them in a bit, maybe. And yeah, they're tiny, but they're the ones that Henri wore. So yeah, they just kept them for
wicked
nostalgia. Yeah.
100%. I still wear like a pair of football boots from when I was like 16, and I'm like 26 now. Yeah, and a couple of players are like, "Oh, you got holes in them." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're the most comfortable boots I've ever had."
Yeah, and the sentiment of it as well. Like football's so about emotion and that as well. So ties in, doesn't it?
Honestly, mate, I remember going playing when I was younger. I had a lush pair of F50s, and I must have stepped in some like dog muck or something, and my dad was like, "Clean them."
Yeah,
and I remember just like,
that stuck with me when you said that. Yeah.
And I just picked them up and I dumped them in the bin instead of cleaning them. And I'm like looking back, that was the worst decision I've ever made.
Yeah. Oh God, I know what you mean. I've tried so many quality boots, like Tail 90s and Freds, and I could sit here and list loads, like F50s. Just think, what was I doing? Like, just keep them. It's almost like a fashion thing, isn't it? You put it away and you think the next thing's better, and 5-6 years go by and you go, shit.
That's it, and they don't always improve either. Like I've had some couple of pairs of boots, and I'm like, oh, these are so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think you liked my post the other day about my new coppers, the blacked out ones. They're an old boot, really. You know, the design hasn't changed, and they're the comfiest boots I've bought for years.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a pair of coppers last year, and I wore them training Monday, and they are the comfiest boots, and I love them. I got a pair of Kaisers that I bought at the same time. I've never worn the Kaisers because I bought literally the coppers at the same time, and I just wore them. So, but yeah, they're great boots, man.
Yeah, really are, especially for coaching, because I think the players don't realise how much you're on your feet more than them sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially setting up before, you know this yourself, and then taking stuff down after and doing other things. Yeah, it's good to have the comfort.
So in terms of that then, when you say about setting things up beforehand, is that something like you're really a stickler for, or like really struggle with if you can't set something up or get it organised beforehand?
I mean, it all depends. I think in the summer training, from my perspective so far, for the 2 clubs that I work for, we've kind of in the summer got our own space, so with the grass pitches. So I'm always there at least half an hour before. The coach that I work with, Liam, he's there probably an hour before. He's very much a be prepared sort of coach, and that's something I've kind of, when I first started, I'd turn up same time as the players. It was awful, really, when I look back, but I didn't know better. I was learning the ropes. That's something that he's definitely a quality he's installed in me. He's definitely someone even though he's younger than me, I've looked up to him. I don't think age matters, just for the record, but just to put it in perspective, his age, I think he's only just turned 26, so when I met him, he was 22. So, but he was leading me, he was at the time 26, 27, and yeah, his influences have really been installed in me. So
And that's good that you can sort of bounce off each other and you say that age doesn't matter. And, sometimes we can look at younger coaches and go, oh, they're trying to push us through, or they're trying to, be the next coach who comes through. And it can be difficult when you sort of think about it like that. But when you have that sort of like harmony or way of working, or going, do you know what, I can actually learn off them because they might be going through the process a little bit different, then you absolutely can. And I know I had an assistant manager, he was in his late 40s, maybe mid to late 40s. Had an amazing background in sales. So I learned so much off him in terms of how to work with people approaching optics, how to really sell the product, how we were selling the team as such, how to reach out to advertisers, sponsors, and all the background stuff which he really brought. And then it really helped us with when we worked with the players. So I learned so much off him, but I know then he was taking things away from in terms of coaching, how to get there, how to set things up, taking sessions himself. And he had coached like 15 years before with his younger nephew helping out, and he was saying, even though like 15 years had passed and he's older and he coached before, he was taking things away that he'd never done before. So it's that continuous cycle and learning journey which is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, football's moved so fast. There's a book on this. I'm listening to it like an audible. Is that in the pyramid?
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm sure you probably already have done it. And it's amazing how football's changed. I mean, I already knew it did, but the depth that it goes into, and I still think that's relevant now, even in just maybe smaller periods. They kind of jump from like 10-year periods, when actually, even from last year, football's changed so much. Do you know what I mean? In little ways and little things that come into it. Obviously, like rule changes and stuff, but equally, I think even coaching trends.
Absolutely, and I think players are more intelligent than they've ever been before, because I know as a coach now, when I've been working with younger players, I had the squad for 7 years, I wanted to give back as much as possible to them and put them on a journey where there were things that I didn't get, or things that I missed out on because the coaches weren't as committed, or the teams folded, or they weren't. They were dads who gave up their time, and I couldn't fault them for it. And but when I'm coaching this because I want to coach and I love it and I wanted to give so much more. So I always wanted to give them up, and I'm like, oh, do you know what? I wish I could go back and be 7 or 8 years of age and go back to playing on a Saturday.
Definitely.
Honestly, and I just want to give back to them and just see that on a Saturday morning when I am coaching them, and when but the knowledge that I've equipped them with, they're so knowledgeable about the game now. Whereas I look back and go, do you know what? I sort of played the game for fun, but I never really understood playing the game of football really.
No, yeah, definitely. I've noticed that more. I think, obviously I've listened to all of the podcasts pretty much that you put out, and a theme that kind of just goes through is how much the players now have that access to YouTube, access to all the socials. Every day that I wake up, you go on Twitter, there's just about 15 more drills that are on there that someone's sharing, and I think that, the players see it, and the players, just as much as the coaches, have them people they follow. And I mean, look, I don't do youth coaching really at the moment. I kind of dabble in and out a little bit, but I'm planning to take over a youth team within our setup next season, hopefully. But I'm just doing like male adults, women adults. But yeah, like the players when I first started 4 years ago were kind of, you could tell they hadn't been coached properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas now the 16, 17-year-old players that we're picking up from higher clubs that are kind of not letting them go, but they're not getting into their first teams. They want first team football. They come to us. And it's so different. Like, you don't need, like, just silly things like, I don't know, if I use the word transition, they know what that means. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas I think footballers before didn't. They just didn't know. Like, they weren't taught it. Even coaches weren't really using that kind of terminology. And now it's, you don't have to worry too much. Does that make sense? They're kind of ready to go out the packet, so to speak.
No, I completely agree, and I can share that similar experience with you. I've taken over an under-19s team this year. I decided to step away from the younger team that I had for 7 years, and I was like, right, I need to work with some older players and gain the experience in seniors that I don't really have, because that's the next sort of gap and step for me. I took over a squad where I knew quite a few of the players, where I've helped coach them before, and I knew the other group. So we sort of had the 19s from last year as 16s, and the 19s from last year are still old enough within that bracket, and the 16s have come up, and they've essentially put 2 squads to make 1. And the older 19 squad from last year have all been ex-scholars, ex-academy players, and they have such amazing knowledge of the game, and they have such high performance, and they're really good technical players as well, and they understand the game. Whereas when we've put some of the 16s in, and they're are one or two ex-academy players in there. If we look at the majority of that 16 squad, the older players have struggled playing with them this year because the younger players don't have that technical ability, or they don't understand the game, or things aren't as fast for them as the 19s might react because they haven't been through that system. So then the 19-year-olds are getting frustrated because the 16-year-old isn't doing something that they would have always expected over the years. So it's been a real interesting contrast having coached these boys at academy level and coached the other boys at grassroots, seeing where the younger boys have had that journey, but there's so much that they miss out on. And when I'm saying things like SSG, to them they're like, what's that? Looking round, and I'm like, just basic terminology for me. But I'm like, sometimes that puts in perspective, like, that not every player we coach is going to know little things that we take for granted, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And for me right now, it's such like a blend of. I just took over. It's only a men's Sunday team that I'm doing. My team that I actually still play for as well, so I'm playing within it. I'm coaching it in the week. I'm playing on the weekend. So I'm playing within my own system. It's weird, but it's really fun actually. It's given me real great perspective and outcomes, and I'm learning so much. But like I had, to put it in perspective, I've got a 16-year-old that came to the first team for summer this season for the women. And like you just said, when we touched on all the terminology, she's like, yeah, like no questions. And then I had a 25-year-old man that I'm coaching, and I'm using that same terminology on a coach, and he's going, what do you mean by that? I don't understand what you mean by transition. I'm just there like, oh, okay. And I have to break it down and remember that actually. Sometimes I need to bring it back for some people. And like you said, with your 16 to 19s, it's bring it back for some. And I think it's an art. Like the best coaches, it's an art to the way they talk. Like we all talk about, delivering the sessions, but I think there's such an art in it. There really is.
Absolutely, and that can be difficult then when you are coaching a 25-year-old, for example, because it's not easy to sort of ask questions and say, oh, what's that? I've never done that before. But it's certainly as we get older, it's more difficult to sort of go, oh, what's that? Because you don't want to be the one putting up the hand in the room, for example.
Oh, yeah, 100%, yeah. And like, that's that. This is kind of going on a bit more deeper into it, but it's the culture that you set up as the coach, and I'm glad that he was able to say it to me, because the previous half of the season, because I only took over from Christmas, I felt like everyone was just scared to talk and stuff, and now it's changed, and he was willing to ask that question. So for me, even though he didn't know, it wasn't a negative in any way. That's one, why I'm there, I'm the coach to coach, and two, he felt that he could talk, and if you're in that culture, like you say, as a man especially, I think expressing yourselves is something that I've noticed in the difference of coaching women and men is the women aren't afraid to kind of express themselves, but sometimes it's a bit much, but that's fine, I have to understand that. Whereas the men, it's quite the opposite, and it's really good to see that they feel comfortable to say, yeah, right, put the hand up, ask a question. It's great.
And it's great that you created that environment, and you talk about environments in terms of how you've harnessed it, how you've changed it. Already that impact that you've had within 2 months if you've taken over in Christmas. But in terms of that then, when we talk about setting up players and transition, for example, in terms of buzzwords and phrases, when you sort of talk with younger players, you sort of equip them to either try and get in the academy system or set them up for when they are 15, 16 and go on and make their decisions whether they continue at semi-pro or play seniors or work out what's for them. But for example, for this 26-year-old or 25-year-old, where he's never heard it before, he might take that away in his game now for the next few years and play till he's 30 and then hang up his boots or whatever. But there might be a time when he starts coaching for his own little nipper, for example, and then he's got something which he's gone, do you know what, I've actually got that. And it's that little knock-on effect and an impact upon not only a player, but in someone else's life, because, this player might not be a professional or might not get that. But he's taking that away in another contrast, and it just shows the importance of coaching, I suppose.
Yeah, and how much there is to it. And for me, there's a big thing that frustrates me a little bit, I must admit, is when we talk about grassroots in terms of a word, we say grassroots, and the first thing people talk about are under 16s. But I'm like, well, hold on, no, there's a whole other massive part of grassroots. That is the male senior game. And of course, there's not many players that then go from, say, Sunday League all the way up to the Premier League. Okay, that doesn't happen often, it's a miracle case. But there's still value in that. These are still people that are, whether we like it or not, I do believe there's a link between the way we coach kids and adults isn't too dissimilar. I hate it when someone says, oh, we can't do that because that's kids football, or we can't do that, that's for adult football. You can change it. And that's the big thing I kind of learned on my UEFA C when I did it. It was like, okay, this is a kid's game. For example, stuck in the mud or something, change it to suit the adults and do it. But I still think, like I said, the grassroots game it's kind of neglected in the adult world. I don't know why, because I still think it is important. And men still will go watch Villa or whoever they support on a Saturday, and they want to recreate it on a Sunday morning. It's still the same habit of what we were when we were 9, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and football is that world that we can end up committing to it and being in, whether we're playing for a long term or where we're going to end up in it. And as you say, it's a shame that it's not represented, and it's good that you say we don't have to change our coaching approach because of the age groups. We can just adapt it in different ways, and that's what I'm finding now is because I am stepping up in the seniors. I've looked at some of our thirds and seconds and the way they've coached earlier on in the year, and even our firsts, and I'm like, right, I haven't actually coached to that level yet, so I'm thinking about how would I go in and do that. Would I still use things from youth coaching? How would I sort of apply it? So it's good to sort of have that footing to go, right, what would I do? But then until I'm actually in it and start approaching it and being within that, then I'm going to find out for myself when that does happen. But I don't really have to worry in terms of I have to do this so much differently, because I can just take what I've done at youth football and then I'm sure I'll tweak my own approach over the years as I'm working with seniors.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, obviously, like I said, the women's is step 6, so it's higher. It's more towards the semi-pro level, and it's more professional, if I'm honest. Some of the clubs that we're playing against, Kidderminster Harrier, stuff like that, that's the level we're at. But the training isn't too much different to the Sunday league, pub leagues, people call it. I don't think it's pub league anymore. I think football's moved on personally, but I played when I was 16. It was a pub league then. I'm 30 now, but the teams we're going up against have got whiteboards, they've got everything, the cones are all out. They're not just kicking the ball at a goal, they're properly warming up. So it's definitely changed in that sense. Of course, it does, everything does over time. But for me, it's just, I don't treat them any different, and I'll still be some weeks where I'll go i.e. tomorrow I'm coaching the women. Right, we're going to do a fun session. I'm not looking for outcomes. I am going to do a session plan, but it's not going to be too strict. I'm not going to look for many outcomes. My outcome is I want morale, I want fun. And that's the biggest thing, if anyone was stepping up from youth to adult, is don't get too caught up in the tactical side of the game too much. And even the motivation, the players should bring that, and the fun games will bring that out of them too. If they are real competitors, then the fun games, i.e. sprinting to do a tic-tac-toe or British Bulldog, as silly as it sounds, that will bring out the competitor in them, and you'll get them outcomes anyway. So, that would be the biggest tip I could give to someone from my experiences.
And I love that. I love how you say fun sessions, because I was talking to my friend earlier on this year, and he's always been in the academy system. He went abroad, had a scholarship, didn't work out for him. He's been back now a few years, dabbling within the seniors setup. And he's never really committed to anything since he's been back, because he just lost his love for it. And obviously then life has taken on, he's got engaged, he's bought a house, and he's done other things where he's missed out on where he has been playing over the years. So he's sort of switched it and prioritised that. But now he's back into playing. He's joined one club this year. They were relegated, so they've had a new management team, an entire new team of players around him. And I knew everyone who was sort of getting involved in that setup. And where I was at another setup, our clubs are quite close to each other, so they're essentially rivals in the same league now, competing. So I was able to talk to him and see the contrast between his club and what he's doing and our club. And he, as much as his new gaffer was like, right, we want to be running tonight, we want to be the fittest team in the league, we got our fitness outcomes that we want to focus on. He was like, well, some weeks, why can't we just play a game of five-a-side or do some fun games and stuff? Yeah, and he's like, I'm at an age now where I'm 25, 26, and I just want to have a bit of fun now I'm playing and just get out with the boys and just have that five-a-side element and have a laugh. And I think his gaffer has adjusted. They've started doing a few more indoor sessions, and they're saying, right, let's order a pizza after training. And just, even though that goes against the fitness element of it, it's brought that team morale up, and just getting the boys together that they've really enjoyed. He's gone, you know what, that was actually decent, rather than our coach who's maybe run the boys into the ground for the last few weeks every week in pre-season, because he's big on fitness.
Yeah, and fitness is something that I don't know if you saw it over Twitter recently. I think it was one of the under 11 teams somewhere were doing a bleep test. I don't know if you saw that everywhere. And there was loads of opinions flying around from all the way from UEFA A licensed coaches at Cat A academies all the way down to the grassroots people. And of course, everyone has their methods. But for me, and all the players that play under me will tell you, we don't really do. Obviously, in pre-season we do a lot of fitness, but I don't do much really. Actually, my experience as a player, when I played a bit, the highest I've played at, there was sessions where we do 45 minutes straight fitness, no ball, and for me, I was the most demotivating thing ever, and made me think, do I want to come back next week, or should I pretend I've got overtime at work? Do you know what I mean? And that's a horrendous attitude, but that's how I felt. And for me, there's so many ways you can do fitness and make it fun. You can take little games where you just make the distance longer, make them be sprinting, but sprinting for something fun. Have a ball at their feet. I really don't believe that you have to be just doing straight running. Personally, that's just obviously my philosophy. I'm not saying it's fact, but that's how I feel about it.
And you do develop that in your philosophy and approach over the years, because you know, as you say there, it's really important. We don't have to do this straight line running. We don't have to be running those laps. And as you say, you can lose that interest and being demotivated. I know when I was 14, I was loving football, or 13, 14 maybe, and then the team folded. Then I was out for a couple of years, and then at 16, my mate was playing. He said, "Oh, come along training," and it was an hour and a half. And I remember just being beasted back and forth on 11 a side pitch, just running. I was like, nah, this ain't for me. I miss football, but I'm not doing this every week. And I went back the next week. We done the same thing. I was like, nah, I'm off, and just didn't bother. So for me, then I missed out on being a 16-year-old and playing football, and seniors wasn't for me then. And that's why I got into coaching from that point, because that's where my mind was at from a young age in terms of what I wanted to do. I was like, do you know what? I don't want to do the running. I don't want to be out in the freezing cold anymore. In terms of being a player and getting groggy and. Even though we still are as coaches, I was like, no, playing's not for me.
It's different. It is different. And I think that's the question I get. I don't know about you, but I get that a lot. Like, what is it? Do you not miss playing? And obviously, I'm still playing, but I mean, like, last season I wasn't playing that much, and the girls like, do you not miss playing? I'm like, yeah, part of me does, but I love this so much more. I don't know. I can't even explain it. It's just a different buzz when your team does well, or even in a training session, you see something magical. As the coach, even if it wasn't technically something you coached, you still feel a little bit like, oh, it's almost like they're your family, they're your kids, even though they're not, or in some cases, obviously they are, not for me, but and then I just love it. And yeah, like you said, I'm good to hear that you did miss out at that age, because I think it's such a great time to be playing football with, the less stresses of a full-time job and stuff, and just enjoy your football. I know I did a college course that was specific to football. It was an MVQ2 in sports, brackets, general football, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I got to train at my local club for pretty much every day, play on Wednesdays, play on Saturdays, then play for my other team on a Sunday. So, like, I was playing loads of football, and it was great. And I think just, going back to what we were saying about the fitness, ultimately, a player comes down, they're there to play football. The one thing you need to play football out of everything is a ball. They need a ball at their feet to enjoy it, in my opinion, and I will always stand by that. I always try to make sure when I do my session plan that I get every player having at least 100 plus touches a session, whether that's for the first year or just pure ball mastery. Get them on the ball. Everyone has a ball if I can, maybe in twos. Get loads of touches, and then of course, I'll always move on to maybe a tactic defence drill. Of course, it's not always going to be ball mastery all the time, because then it gets a bit like, okay, we need to be goal orientated. But I like to get them loads of touches first, because I think then they always come away from the session going, all right, if I didn't get a lot of the ball in that tactic defence, at least I've had that time on the ball before. Does that make sense?
No, I get that entirely, and I love touches on the ball. I know when I first went into an academy session, they went straight into ball mastery, and that's something that I'd never really seen before as part of a warm up. Warm up was typical stuck in the mud, or it might be tag, or it might just be a passing exercise, for example. It could be really basic. When I went into the academy and they were doing ball mastery, they were like, right, you can do a rondo, you're going to do a Cruyff turn, you might do some kick ups, your left foot, your right foot, your drag back. You leave the ball, quickly go out to another ball, outside hook, etc. And I took that away with me straight away into my grassroots team, and then every session that I did was like, oh, this is such a great component, such a great fitness element. It's fun, it's enjoyable. They're learning a skill set, and then it all became about touches. So how many touches could the player get within a session? And then when you sort of do your licenses, they're like, right, ball rolling time should be like 70-80% minimum. And then every session that I'm in now, and I go and watch other coaches coach, for example. And it's not to stand there and criticise them. It's just in the back of my mind, I'm going, the ball's not rolling much there. So how much time has this player actually spent over an hour touching the ball? And really, realistically, how many, how much development opportunities have they had, for example? And I know a lot of my coaching is orientated around a technical side. It used to be really technical, lots of cones out, you might just do your typical running in and out. But I've evolved so much from that where I don't tend to do that so much, and it's more around the SSG with a technical built in where there is lots of running, there is lots of ball contact time, and we get the technicals out of it rather than line drills like they used to do, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll admit, like 4 years ago when I first started, I kind of came into it just because they needed a coach, and I was still playing at the time, but I had that little thought process of maybe doing coaching. I had my FA level 1 when I went to college, never used it for years. They asked me to come in, I came in, and I'll be honest, I was doing all the stuff that I hated as a player, but I was repeating it because that's all I knew. I had no course, I'd never read a book on it, I'd never done anything. I was just using my own experiences, drills that my coaches had done with me, and it became very apparent how much the players weren't enjoying it. Even I thought, right, there's got to be a better way than this, and that's when I started to obviously research more. And like now, I'm really guilty for it. Like, I'll go watch even say like another coach at the club. Like I go down on Mondays and I watch, and I don't mean to be critical, but I never will say that to them unless they ask for constructive feedback. But I don't know about you, but I could be anywhere. I could maybe, even on a match day, you could have like kids training on the side of you. If I look at a session, I always think, how can I improve that session? And sometimes I can't. Sometimes you go, actually, that's pretty good. I can't even improve that. But I'm always thinking, right, could I add in a line there, a press line? Could I add in this box? Could I maybe split it in 4 and say, right, 2 in each box? Always try and do that, and then like all coaches, I'll nick it, edit it, develop, bring it into practices that I do. So, yeah, I can't help myself. I think that's something my UFC definitely taught me. And I know some people say, oh, it's just badge collecting. I've had that from some people already. I understand where you're coming from, but to me, it was so valuable. I learned so much. I had a great mentor in Luke Ashley's at Kidderminster Harriers. Coach, he was amazing, like so supportive away from the course, which is something I didn't realise you'd get. And yeah, like I've just got I feel like I could if anyone's thinking about it, I definitely would recommend it to someone because it opens your mind to different thought processes and viewing things differently in the analytical side.
I completely agree with you. I know I've done my UEFA C and UEFA B, but I came away from my UEFA B whoa, this is amazing. And you're doing so much on a Sunday in terms of your contact, and then you really want to apply it when you're back in training within the week. And there's maybe elements that you never really thought of before on components, and even the kind of feedback we give, terminal and concurrent. I never heard of that type of feedback before. It was get the players in at the start, get the players in at the end, maybe stop a session, and you might have that coaching cycle from your C, but then right, we're going to take that, but you're not going to do that as much anymore because you're really going to give a lot of concurrent stuff. I was like, do you know what? That's amazing. And it's little things like that you take away. And as much as people say badge collecting, I could go around going, oh, I got a B, and some coaches literally do, and they go, I got the B, I got the A, and they're so arrogant with it. And I'm like, I got my B because I want to improve the players, and I'm like, do you know what? I took so much from that, and that's why in Wales we have conferences every 3 years that you have to attend to keep it topped up. But I went to a conference last year, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Everyone's networking, you're coaching, you're talking about football, you're watching sessions. And Toure was there delivering a session. I was like, this is learning within the style. You're like, this is wicked.
No, definitely. And there's nothing I hate more than seeing people put other coaches down. And it's awful, especially I get that, it's a competitive environment football. We know that. There's no getting away from it. I mean, it's a game, you want to win it. I understand that. But I do always do my best, the draw which we played this season. We beat them 4-3, but honestly, the difference from them last year, we were hammering them last year, double figures. And the job the coach has done, it's pretty much the same team, a few different players. And when I shook his hand, can I just say, I don't mean this in any patronising way, that is absolutely brilliant. They played out from the back, the movement, it was fantastic. And I'm someone that I am competitive, I want to win, but as soon as that whistle goes, I always try and give some sort of confidence to the opposition, because if we don't help lift each other and use that word, like you said, networking, how are we going to improve the game for the betterment of our country? These players, of course, we're at first team level, but you don't know how that player's going to develop in the next 4 years. And the only way we can do that is with better coaching.
No, I completely agree. For example, if you are in England developing players, as much as you might be your team competing against the other team and you are there for results, at the end of the day, you take yourselves out and you go and move abroad or live lives or move away from coaching. These players are still playing and are within the system somewhere. And if they become professional, you've had that impact upon them, but you are there to develop them, because regardless of that result on Sunday, is it really going to matter in the grand scheme in 5 years' time if they've picked up in an academy or they've got a pro contract somewhere? Because, it has been a game to enable them to move forward, but did the win really elevate them to that level? A lot of questions could be asked over that, but if these players are developing and they're growing within that, then it's their own journey that we're having that impact upon and where they're doing it together. And it's great that you say giving feedback, because I know at times when opposition managers said, "Oh, I love the way your team plays and they're really intense," and I've thrived off it. So just giving little things like, "Oh, do you know what? He was decent," or "She was really good today." Yeah, that goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely, and. Just extending on that, I mean, we've got a player within our setup, coach within our setup, and her team, she's had them from 6 years old, they're now all 15 years old, and we've been talking about it, and she's kind of next season's the last season sort of thing. It's not, I think they'll probably end under 18s, but they could go anywhere at 16, and you'll know this yourself. But I try to explain it to her that it's almost like planting a tree. You plant the tree and you look after it all that time, but the tree isn't just for you to enjoy. You nurture it all the way up to it before it grows, but it'll be there long after you leave. And it's the same thing with a player. You teach them these things, you nurture them, and it's not just the football. You nurture them as a person growing up from that age. But then at some point, you kind of got to, I'm not going to say let go, of course, stay in contact and enjoy and watch their careers, but you've got to remember that it's not just for you to enjoy. There's going to be other coaches, sadly, not sadly, but probably positively is probably a better way of saying it, that are going to take them on. And hopefully, if you've done a really good job, you're going to see them really shine, and that should be something you're proud of.
Of course, and I can share that similar experience where I have given up this team, and you grow that connection with them. And 7 years is quite a tough period to sort of give up, because you have that emotional connection with your players. You've been through a lot, tournaments, games, the ups, the downs, the lows. You've worked with parents, you've done presentations, you've seen them grow up from really small to being quite tall into lippy high school kids, and they've still got a lot of journey to go on. But I sort of had a couple players in my mind. I'm like, you know what, I don't want to give these players up because they're so good. I don't want someone else to go right their mind now. And it was really hard to sort of adjust to, but they're enjoying their football and they're learning so much. And I'm like, right, as long as you're unable to go on and still have those decisions, and you're happy with the next coach or the coach after who coaches you, then I sort of played my part. But I'm like, I'm still always going to be here. Even when you're 16, 17, you want to say, right, can we do a 1-to-1, or give me a ring, or you say, come down to my game, or you're still playing because of that, then I'm like, right, that's the proudest moment that I can have. I don't want you to become really rubbish because you're now being coached by someone else.
No, that's it, yeah. I mean, we always want the best. I mean, there's, I've now done this for the same first team for 4 seasons now, and we've had players come and go. That's just the nature of it. Not because most of the time we wanted to keep players, but they've gone on, we've coached them well enough. I'd like to think that they have. That's the reason why they've gone on and got paid, and played for higher clubs, and it's great feeling. But equally, you miss them straight away, and even now, I still keep in contact with those sides. I like to think that I'm more of an arm round the shoulder type coach, if that makes sense. I'm probably not strict enough. I'm going to be honest with you, Luca. There's times I think I need to be a bit stricter. I let them off a lot with lateness and stuff, and I'm just probably the cool teacher look, if that makes sense. But maybe I need to be a bit more disciplined. But yeah, I just love them all, and I wish sometimes that we'd kept made more effort to keep some of them. But at the same time, I think it was best for them, and I have to just let them go and enjoy it. And I've always said to them, the door will always be open to come back. As long as they're not horrible when they leave and they do it in the right manner, they'll always be welcome back in some capacity anyway.
And that's what you want. You don't want to close doors. I know I had like a 16-year-old. It is a tough time, as you say. They are 16, they're growing up, they're sort of finding girls, they're finding going out, they're getting jobs, and they might rather spend the time going out with their girlfriend on Saturday than playing football. And like some coaches really hammer them for it. I'm like, you know what? If I was a 16-year-old, I can remember going out with my girlfriend at that time. And I can remember spending those Saturdays. So I've got nothing wrong. They've been in school all week or college, and then they trained, and then the seniors have called them up, and then the weekend's gone. So like I cut them a bit of slack because I'm like, they're enjoying life. But this 16-year-old was like, right, I've had enough now. I've been playing since I was like 5 or 6. I just want a bit of a breather. And he's had a month out. He came training Monday, and I was like, the door's not shut for you. You're still registered. You can come back any game, any training. Just because you want some time out, I'm happy to accommodate that. It doesn't mean, right, time out, right, I'll see you at the start of pre-season. It's like, right, just come back when you feel like it, because it is a tough time, and sometimes you have to nurture the players, and there is that nurture nature debate, and how much we nurture, or whether we have to discipline them to give them that leadership, etc. But sometimes we really do need that nurture just to make sure that they remain in the game, because the game is for them, and as we say, if we moved on, we want them to still be playing.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, there's too many managers that I played for that forget I'm a human being at the end of it. Yeah, of course, there were times probably needs to give me a bit of a telling off, but equally, when you're telling me off about a mistake I made in a football game, I'm kind of there like, well, I didn't do that on purpose, I want to win, so why are you absolutely hammering me for it? And that was just the way of me. I've got a friend that's the opposite. If you didn't get hammered for it, you'd be questioning the manager. So, we're humans with different personalities. How you approach a certain player will work one way. That's the biggest lesson I've learned, to approach someone a different way. Had a player recently, like you just said, 16-year-old. She's got a girlfriend and stuff now. She's happy. And, it's the same thing for her. Like, as a coach, you'll sit there and go, why have you quit? Like, she's got brilliantly talented. But then I'm like, you said, well, hold on. She spent 10 years in the game. She probably enjoyed that 10 years, but now she's an adult. She's experiencing these new experiences. Why wouldn't she want to go and do that, spend a bit more investment of time into that? And, and I'm hoping that it will just be a phase and she'll come back. If not, I'll always wish her the best, and if I ever see her, I'll always be polite. And I just can't stand people that kind of just, as coaches, go, oh, you don't play for me then, sort of F you, so to speak. And they kind of just go really, really, really horrible with it, and like they take it like it's a real personal thing. And I'm like, God, I just don't understand it. Never will.
No, I completely agree. And I've seen literally coaches shut players out, literally.
Yep.
And it's like they've hammered that door shut and it's like, no going back. You're like, why? Just because the players made that decision to go elsewhere. There's players that I've lost over the years who are really, really good young players. And it just at the time we sort of, like the team and them grew apart, or they had to go on their own steps or made the decision to go somewhere else. And it can hurt because you put so much time into the player, but you're like, you know what, that door is going to be there whether you keep it shut, but it is there. And it's emotional, but you know, at the end of the day, if they're doing that decision, then you know we've done our part in their sort of journey.
Yeah, and I think as well, you need to, as a coach, literally what this podcast is called, reflect. Well, what were you doing that maybe pushed us to that decision? Was the training just too disciplined? Was it not enjoyable enough? You know, football should be a fun experience at every level, even the Premier League. You know, you see the players playing with confidence at Arsenal right now. They look happy. You know, they look happy. Even Man United, great example. You know, they look happy now. They're playing well. You look at the teams that aren't playing so well down the bottom. They don't look, there's not many smiles on their faces. So I think it's all relevant. Just kind of expanding it and throw a question to you, because obviously now I've got you here. How do you feel in terms of commitment to training affecting you picking a player on the weekend for the game?
That's a great question, and that's something that I've really learned upon when I stepped up in the 19s now. So when I was younger, I say younger as a younger coach. When you are coaching youngers, you want to instill it where they are training, and it's difficult when they're younger because you have it on fairness, minutes, and how do you grow them within that. But I was always big, if you don't train, then you don't get to start that game or play. So when I done it within the academy, we were quite stickler on that. And that set our boundary and performance. For youngers, it's all about minutes. It's difficult. I sort of approach that in a lot of a different way, making sure, because there's a lot of optics to manage there. But in academy, I was big on it because of that commitment in terms of the expectations. But now I'm with the 19s. It's sort of different because they do have these things. They are working. They do have jobs. They might have trained with the seniors on Tuesday, but they haven't trained with us on the Monday night beforehand. So I'm like, right, do I select all the boys who trained with me on Monday and start Saturday and then not start the boys who played with the seniors? Or do I go, right, the boys have trained with the seniors and count that as a training? So it's a difficult one because some weeks you're like, right, all these actually deserve the start. But you're like, right, but we need a couple of more technical players in there who have been with the seniors because they need to balance out the squad in terms of that leadership, in terms of that support along the side. So I would say the more I've sort of grown, the less I've sort of focused on, right, train to play kind of thing. I'm like, right, if you're there and available and you then let's look at the situation rather than going, right, you didn't train in a week, these boys are starting. For me, for now where I'm currently at is literally look at the situation and look where that is.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's so different and there's so many variables depending on the scenario, i.e. on the under-8 side. It's not always the kids' fault, the parents.
No, absolutely.
The parents might be going, right, we're going to the Harvester or whatever restaurant tonight on the Tuesday you're meant to be training and having no regard and not seeing football. Because people forget not every parent likes football. Just because the kid does, they might have got it from their uncle, they might have got it from kids from school. I think that always gets forgotten sometimes, and I think some kids can kind of be punished for that, and I don't agree with it. Obviously, for me at senior level, I'm trying to install them more towards you train, you play, because we're a men's Sunday side mainly, just to try and get the commitment up really, and just because we're trying to work on things in training that will improve us on the weekend. But then obviously then with my women's team is different, it's different level, and I have to respect, like you said, some have to work, I've got 16, 17-year-old girls, they're going to have to work awkward shifts around college, around their education. Well, the only time they're going to do that is after, that's when we train. So, it's an absolute balancing act, because then you've got senior players who've got Monday to Friday settled jobs, finish at 5 o'clock going, well, I'm not getting picked by a train. And you're there like, yes, but I can't pick 7 centre-halves. If my 2-3 wingers are all working at Waitrose and Asda, there's not a lot I can do about that. I need them on the weekend. I can't play a formation like that. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I just thought it's really interesting to see your perspective, of course, with your experience as well. So yeah, I really appreciate that kind of insight into that. So it's really good.
No, that's great, and I love that. I love that you pitched that. So you're the first one who actually pitched a question back to me. And it's great because it's that two-way conversation. Because as much as I have created this podcast, and I try to get the emphasis on who I've got on, like yourself, for example. Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to sort of have that question bounce back and go, "Oh, right," because I have reflected then, which is good. And it's good. I could say to you, right. How do you feel then? Because you're driving that standard and changing in your Sunday league team with the men, and you have to make that change in that environment. So to get them training and to make sure that they're there with that commitment. You've set really high standards, so you've got that principle there within you where you are disciplined in that sense. But then with the girls, you're sort of going, right, that discipline sort of comes down half-mast. Do you find that difficult to sort of cope with that half-mast? Because, for example, when Jose Mourinho always talks about principles, right? He says, right, you stick with these principles. They are not interchangeable. They are fixed, and that's how they stay. And sometimes I'm like, right, yeah, it has to stay that way. But then when you are half-mast with that one, for example, you're like, oh, am I getting this wrong? And that's where the art of coaching comes into, because I can't say to you, oh, that's completely wrong, because it's our own approach and that balance that we have to get with those players. So what you're driving in that change with the males is not the same for the females, but your approach is working here and working there. So realistically, you're in the right, but there's so much you can take away from that.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I can even explain my reasons. My principles are the same, but the difference is in men's football, I've played, it's a local team. I've played for loads of local teams. I've played with loads of local players. If I need to go get 15 new players, I can. Whereas in women's football, our catchment area, because we're just outside of Birmingham, all the Birmingham teams take all the players. We don't have many. Like, any good players from my town go to play for a top team like West Brom, Wolves, Leafield, who are one of the national sides. So I'm not saying I'm picking up the scraps. We've got some phenomenal players, and I think actually they've been kind of missed by these clubs personally. I think some cracking players that we've got, and I'm really, really grateful to work with them. But because the catchment area and the sport as a whole hasn't grown to the levels, you've still got your netball teams, stuff like that. That's much more. I don't want to sound anyway sexist or anything like that, but it's just how history and how society's come on. They're still going to play that more because they play it more in school. So it's hard for me to get players in football. Like I say, me and Liam's the manager, I'm the assistant. But it's hard for us to get these players in because we don't know any. We're men. We didn't play with any.
No, yeah, I get that.
My Sunday team, I could go on my phone now and ring 15 people and get a team for tomorrow. So that's the difference. That's why my principles have had to change in that sense. And I think, for Jose, of course, what a guy, what a person to look up to and definitely take stuff from. But the reality is, and it's just the way we talk about adaptive practices, you've got to adapt methods and things that you quote, things that you hear. There's too many people that I see will read one book from Paul Scholes saying, loyalty this, loyalty that, and then they'll go down to, I don't know, Birmingham under 11, apply it to them, and I'm like, hold on, relax a bit, little Timmy might want to play Fortnite tonight, he might not want to be doing that, so, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's kind of why my principles change on the two, it's relevant to what my power is, so to speak.
Absolutely, and when you say you're going into the youth game, do you sort of have a team set up for next year, or go?
Not yet. I've kind of been trying to throw things on socials here and there and see what I can kind of get into. Originally, I'll be honest, I didn't really want to touch anything under 16 in terms of teams. So I was like, I'm doing first team and I'm really happy with the adult game. But then I was like, the more and more I see coaches on Twitter, like yourself, like Rob Porter at Oxford, other people like that, I look at you and go, you guys are learning so much more from the kids. It's not just you teaching them, they're teaching you. And I'm like, I'm missing out here and I need this wide range. I'm really pushing myself to do as many courses as I can. I'm looking at the Talent ID course. I'm looking at the futsal. I think futsal's got a huge relevance to 11-a-side football that's untouched. You only got to look at Brazil. Yeah. Obviously, that's a conversation for another day. But, yeah, nothing set up yet. There'll be definitely, we're adding teams every year. We've only been a team since 2017, the women's, so we're growing every year. It's amazing to be at the level we're at in such a short time and to achieve what we've achieved. I say, more so Kate and Liam, who are the guys that run it. Shout out to them. They're brilliant. Again, both of them founded it at a similar age to you. I believe you started the club quite young, didn't you? What you said in other podcasts.
Yeah, I started at 16, and I had my first team then when I was 18. So as much as I'm, 18-year-old adult at that time, I was still so young within it. And looking back, some of the things I've done, I cringe at. But you don't realise that because you're learning along the way, and everyone's going to be in the exact same position. Yeah. And I wouldn't take starting back. I wouldn't go, right, do you know what, I wish I had 2 years completely learning. I would still do exactly the same because I've learned so much in terms of people, parents, how to take things away. So it's really interesting that, you've got a lot from seniors. You might say, Luca, do you know what, coach the seniors this way. And then I might go, do you know what, this might really work well with the youth. So it's interesting that you're going sort of from seniors to youth, and then I'm going from youth to seniors, because it is that two different street. And I think you are going to have such a learning journey once you get into the younger players.
Definitely. And I think that's something that I noticed on my UFC. It's not, people go on there and think it's just you going and learning about drills and philosophies and stuff. Well, actually, the networking is probably the biggest part. The networking I got, there was a lad from Doncaster who did all of their youth, did like a massive part of their youth program there. Just filled the youth coaches. There wasn't many first team really. I think there was only 3 of us at the first team out of 30 people. You know, that just shows you. And I learned so much from them, and virtually all the kind of like practice sessions for the coaches, you know, the demonstration sessions they do that you get involved in. All of it was like an under 11 case study, and there was no first team case studies. So to me, it was all like, whoa, this is like Charlie's Chocolate Factory to me. There's so much to learn, and I loved it, and I am excited for it. I mean, I know I'm not going to be perfect to begin with, and that's hence why I'm going down and watching the youth coaches now to try and get some ideas and stuff. But yeah, I really think it'll be good for my growth, and I'm excited for the challenge, and yeah, just to try and hopefully, like I said, plant some trees, grow them, and let's see what happens really.
Absolutely, and there's so much that you can take away, obviously, where you are working with seniors, and obviously you've been around the males, the females, so you can, you know, speak to both sexes, because there is so much within the human person and the psychology ourselves. You know, we might be off put by speaking male to male. Some males that I speak to, I'm like, oh, I get off better if I speak to this female, because I can just feel like a calmer balance when I speak. And sometimes you feel like, right, there's aggression coming this way already. I don't fancy this conversation. But there is so much within that when it comes down to people, and I love that, because there's so much more to coaching. I think of leadership, think of people optics, and that's something that I've really looked into, is optics and how we're and perceptions. That's massive. So obviously, when you work with parents, that's going to be a huge eye opener, because you're not only managing the kids, you're managing the parents as well. And as you say, when you got, you know, little Jimmy wants to play Fortnite, it's then how do we manage the parents? Then how do we support them? How do we look at their minutes? If one parent's unhappy over here, is that going to be a knock-on effect here, or is this parent going to start going, right, you need to come to the dark side, and then suddenly you've got a ploy of people who are ready to turn on you. Honestly, it's a real eye-opener in terms of people themselves, and you might go, do you know what, I've done 2 years of youth coaching, that's it for me, straight back to seniors, or you could end up finding and fostering a team that you can have for a few years. So it's definitely an interesting journey. You know, it's going to be great to see your own growth and what you do in the youth, and whether you know, fall in love with it and go, do you know what have I missed out on, or go, do you know what, that's something that I've done and I'm happy to move on with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest thing that people have kind of told me that are already doing it, or like, not mistakes that they've made, but lessons they've learned, probably a better way of saying it, is stuff like setting your standard from the first day, setting your standard out, having almost like a philosophy or a culture for the parents, not even the kids. This isn't the kids are kids. They're going to learn as they go. They'll get the culture as they grow. But obviously for the parents to go, right, this is what I expect. If you're going to be mousy, if you're going to do this, this is the consequence. So they know straight away, and I think that will help. But yeah, I'm kind of going in there already with an idea of how I want to be as a coach in terms of, and I think maybe they're wild ideas, I don't know, like stuff like I want every player to play every position for the first 3 seasons. I don't want players stuck in one position, even goalkeeper. And for some people would have looked at me and like, whoa, you know, youth coach looking like, you can't just put a girl who's a striker and goal. I'm like, well, she will play there. So I think like, and that would kind of be like my rules of me doing the team. If you want me to do the team, this is what I'm going to do. If you want a platform for your young girl, or your son, it could be a boys team, I don't know yet, to play football, this is how it's going to be, because I want them to get I want to develop players that have a wide range of skills. And I think there's too many players that I've seen that I've played with myself that are like, i.e., one of my friends, Joe, I'm convinced he could have gone professionally as a goalkeeper if he'd applied it from a young age, but because he just wanted to play outfield, and all he did was play outfield, he never developed his skills early enough. So I just think there's a real value in having the complete player. Of course, that's the perfection that we're going for. I'm not expecting to get to that. Players will develop how they develop, but I want to give them the opportunity to grow as a defender, as a midfielder, as a forward, as a goalkeeper.
No, I completely agree with you there, and so much comes within that. They learn every different position, they're adaptable, they can move in, so if, you know, once they have a coach, or if they go into the academy or they move teams, then they're not off-put by playing in that position because they've already done it. I know in the academy system, they're massive on it, so you're already contributing towards that, even though you're not, you know, being paid by MK Dons or Oxford, for example, but you are having that effect upon them. And we talk about, you know, game knowledge, game intelligence. So some players have knowledge of the game, but they won't actually have the intelligence to go and play left wing back or move into centre mid because they've always played striker or always played centre back. And I know I had under 15s the other week that I had come in to do a coaching session, and the one boy was like, I'm a centre back, not a centre mid. And I put him straight in the centre mid. I said, well, it's the exact same principles as centre back. You recover, you run, you get back, you defend, you pass off the middle. You just have to do a little bit more work here, and then we can work upon everything else. But do everything you've done at centre back, and then we'll go back and learn everything around it. So that's a great one. And I know one of the parents recently messaged me over Christmas about his 16-year-old boy, said he's never played at left back before. Why are you playing him now? I'm like, because he has the ability to provide the attacking output at the left back, and he complements the winger in front of him to do really well on that side, and he's actually really good defensively. I was like, just because he's 16 doesn't mean that he has accomplished the position, and because he's always played there, that's his final position. I'm like, okay, he might be playing it for enjoyment, or there might not be an academy opportunity, etc. Whereas, at 11 or 12, you might be looking for that. I said, do you know what? I still want him to develop in that. I still want him to have these positions open to him. So it's a great concept in terms of how people fixate a mindset upon a position. But then once you start rotating them, it can really open up conversations in terms of parents won't like it, etc. But then how do you further develop players, or how do you adapt when a game comes tactical? So if you go into a cup final and a parent bollocks you because you've lost 4-0, then you go, well, do you know what? I could have actually changed him there. I could have done that. And if you would won that game 4-0, they would be praising you up. But if you lose it 4-0, and honestly, you're never going to win everyone over. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned.
Yeah, and that's why I want to set my stall up straight away with the parents. Say, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not bothered until they're 16 if they win or not. The first team's the only team I care that wins in this club, because that's what the point of the first team is. However, development is across the whole range, and I want your son or daughter, when they get to 16, to be the complete player ready to go. If they win stuff because they develop, brilliant. I'm not going to not enjoy it or celebrate it. Of course I would, but for me, it's about that development. And exactly what you use, the example you used there. If you play that winger at left back, he's going to have, and he plays left back, he's going to have a better insight into what he's up against when he goes up against the left back. Yeah. Because he's played the position, he understands the struggles of what left backs don't like. So as a winger now, suddenly he's going, right, when I played there, I didn't like it when the player dragged me wide or the player took me inside. So then suddenly he's got a whole range to then attack with. And actually, I think that would improve him as a winger offensively, not just defensively.
Absolutely, and that's what we need in players, because they lack that skill set then. Because if they were to go in an academy, I know I'll keep relating to the academy a lot, because I'm like, right, that's the purpose of a young player. If they're in the game, or that's their dream to become a professional footballer, then if they go into the academy and the academy coach says, right, I want you to play there, and they go no, then the academy coach is just going to go, right, next. And then this player moves on, and they've missed out, and they might be a really good technical player, and that sometimes does come down to the academy coaches and systems where they miss out on these gem players, as you say, not unlocking that potential. And it's great that you said about that goalkeeper, friend, because I've got a goalkeeper now in my squad. I coached him at under 14s, under 15s. He was our second choice keeper. Good keeper, but not as good as our first team keeper. And over the years, he now has overtaken that keeper in terms of ability, and he's a better keeper, and he's a regular seconds keeper now. And in the next 5 years, he'll be the first team keeper. But we played him at left wing on Sunday. He's fit as a fiddle. He played at left back at the development centre when we had him. And now, 3-4 years on, he's playing at left back or left wing. And he went on, had an assist and a goal on Sunday, and he brought us back from 2-0 down to 2-2. I was like, but this boy was a keeper. So it's like, all those times we played him at left back, that benefited him, because even though he hasn't made it in the academy, he's now playing seniors football. Okay, he's still a goalkeeper at seconds, and he's got opportunity of firsts. But when he is with the 19s, or he can play outfield because the third team keeper needs a game, he can still play outfield. He's still getting minutes, still getting touches. He's still fit. He still complements the team. He contributes, and he was a huge asset Sunday. And this Sunday, it's likely that he'll start again.
Yeah, and I think that's part of coaching. The people forget that we're not just doing the practices and stuff. It's about looking into the players and seeing, okay, well, he's got this attribute, that attribute. I can apply it here. And just to use an example of like Martin Sordell at Bolton, he was a goalkeeper for his youth. He then became a number 9, and people were like, well, what's made you such a good number 9? He went, well, I know what the keepers don't like. I know what the keeper's going to do because I was a keeper.
Yeah.
He's got that insight, and for me, it's not just that. I mean, look, we had a player called Miles who was playing centre half for the first team. She was playing central midfield when I joined. So she was playing central midfield. She played the first full season as central midfielder for us. And I turned to Liam the one day and I said, look, I really think she's got all the attributes to be an unbelievable centre half. The way she was so dominant in the air, she was strong, she was quick, especially for women's football. They're attributes that they're getting better by year, but right then it was like, whoa, there's no one like this in our division. We put her there, and now she's, last summer she moved up a step. She's now playing for teams against players, are getting paid and stuff. So for me, that was a coach. That was a really nice moment to go. Maybe I'm not saying she wouldn't have. Maybe she would have developed still as a centre mid and gone up. Maybe, but I know for a fact that now she's gone up and she was signed as a centre half, and that's a great feeling to know that you looked at that, addressed it, changed it. And don't get me wrong, it was kind of kicking and screaming with her because she was like, I don't want to leave centre mid. I don't want to go further away from the goal. I want to score a goal. Because we all do, don't we? We all want to score goals, no matter what position we play. But I think by the end of it, when she left, she kind of went, thank you for that. You really helped me out. So, there's so much more to coaching than people realise, and this is why, going back to earlier in our conversation, I said people ask me about, do you miss playing? I do miss playing. That's what we all want to do. We want to play, but there's so many more layers in coaching than playing. And I just love all these different avenues you can go down. You can go as a youth coach, you can go as a first team coach, you can go as a scout, you can go into analytics. There's so many different things in the modern football. It's fantastic, really.
Absolutely, and I agree. And that's when I sort of talk to coaches, I sort of go, well, why coaching? Why not an analyst? Why not a scout? Why not a fitness coach? Why not, a commentator or someone away from the game where you can just watch the game or do the analysis or talk about it or do the media stuff? Why do you want to be coaching? Because coaching isn't easy. You're out in all weathers. It's late.
Yeah.
You're dealing with players when they're upset. You might have parents that you need to deal with. The game's off. You're arranging a team late on night. Tactical changes. You leave players out. They're unhappy. And it's like, why do you want all of that? Especially sometimes when you're not getting paid for it. And then sometimes when you are paid for it, the money is shit anyway. So realistically, why do you coach? And it's like, I just love coaching. I love being with people. Like I was coaching Monday night. I was like, oh, this is wicked. I love this session. I'm like, I wish I was doing this all day, every day. I'm like, I'm quite lucky that I work with young people, so I can go into school and I can do things. But it's not coaching and it's difficult, but I'm still sort of related to it. And I'm like, do you know what? But you want that because you just love coaching. You love seeing the players progress, even though I've got no kid there. I'm not involved for any particular reason because I have that attachment to them. I've never played for the club. I do it because I enjoy seeing these players grow. And essentially, I'm out of pocket. I'm travelling late. I've lost that evening. And I'm like, why? I haven't got the kid or that commitment to the club. But I'm like, because I just love coaching.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing that I don't get it across for players, but there are times when they're frustrating you when they moan and stuff, and I really just want to turn around and go, you do realise how much goes into this session or goes into that match day? Who do you think arranges the ref? Who makes sure that we're not kick clashing? Who makes sure that we've got transport to the game? There is a good venue, etc., etc., form after form. At the moment with the FA, you've got to do it electronically and with paper, which I'm lucky enough that I'm only having to do it for one team. Liam's doing it for numerous teams, bless him, and I'm there like looking at him and think, he's got no kids in this club. He never did, still hasn't, and he's running nearly 9 teams. And I'm just there like, does he get a thank you? You might get a point or someone at the end of the year. Is that relative pay? I'd say probably not. Do you know what I mean? In the hours he's putting in, if we even on minimum wage, thousands and thousands of pounds. But we don't do it for that. We do it because ultimately there was that experience you had as a child that made you fall in love, and from there you can't go back.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And it's great that you say about Liam and in terms of what you've done in terms of him, because he's obviously had that impact and you've got that relationship, which is great. And I know when I was a team coach for years, and then we just had a conversation one day about setting up a grassroots club, and within a month it happened. And I went from having one team to being responsible for the entire running of the club, and we were setting up new teams. So then on a Saturday morning, by the time within 6 months we had 4 teams up and running. So we went from like 12 players to like 50. You got all these parents and all this space, and I'm there like 7:30 every Saturday, opening up the gates for them, setting up all the cones, and then 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock rolls on, and I'm finally packing stuff up, or I'm going for a haircut, and then I'm home by 3. I'm like, that's a working day. I haven't earned any money off that. I've got no kids, and I'm like doing it for everyone else's kids, and I'm like, why? But I'm like, I've done it because I had that purpose and I loved it. And now I'm with the 19s. Because they play on a Saturday with the seniors. We don't train, so I freed up my Saturday, which I really enjoy now. I'm like, right, Friday night, I don't have to get up early tomorrow, and we've got a later game on a Sunday. I don't have to get up, and when we play on a first team pitch, everything's set up, so I just go in, get the boys up, and like we go and do our thing. I don't have to worry about setting up cones or putting up the nets and all that. And it's become a dream in reality, and it's nice. And it's after so many years, like 7 years of doing that and being there every Saturday and Sunday morning, like 7:30 between 8 o'clock and the late. It's just so nice to sort of have a Saturday back and stuff. But that journey's great, man.
Oh, I totally agree. The memories and I think you appreciate the highs more then, because like when we won the County Cup, which in women's football it's a bigger deal than in men's, because all the best teams play in the county play, no matter if it's Watford in London, etc., etc. For us, it was obviously Kidderminster Harriers, Worcester City, these kind of clubs that have got their own facilities, everything. We don't have that. To beat them and win the County Cup was incredible. It was an amazing day, and all them hours where you were putting up a net, taking down a net, sorting the kit out, everything was just you just thought I'd do it again. No questions asked. And just to extend on what you're saying, people say to me all the time, like at my job, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing tonight?" Oh, I'm coaching. I'm coaching. Every night I'm coaching. They're like, oh, so how much money are you earning off that extra? I was like, nothing. If anything, I'm losing money because it
Yeah.
costs me money to do it. Like, and at times I'll even, if my team's not doing well, I'll try and throw an incentive in there and say, right, I'll buy someone a drink if they score today. You know, I'm throwing my own money at it. Not loads of money, of course, but little things here and there, and it just all add up. And but I wouldn't change it for the world because I just absolutely love what I do. And I never thought I would coach, if I'm honest, like not to this extent, but now I've got the bug for it, and I think we all talk about that bug that we get, and now I just could never go back, and actually I want to develop myself. And someone put on Twitter the other day, was asking a kind of a general tweet of, what's your ambition as a coach? And of course it would be to go professional and work in an academy one day. That is what I want to do, hence why I'm investing in myself with courses and stuff, and listening to different books and other coaches and doing stuff like this with you. And it's been an absolutely amazing experience to talk to you, and I've took so much from this already. But yeah, I just think it's people that ever wondered, is it worth it? I'm like, yeah, please do it. It's the best thing.
Absolutely, and I agree. And I tried to push a couple of my mates into coaching, and they just wasn't having any of it. And my mate works in a high school as well. He's been there 8 years, and I'm like, just do a bit of coaching with me. And there was a couple of times I just about got him out, but it just wasn't enough. I was like, right, you go home every night, you literally just chill. I was like, come and do a bit of coaching, even if you don't do the Sunday. And he's like, no. And it's been such a shame because he is someone that I think could have made at least semi-pro. And now he's 26. I've just got him back into seniors football after like 8 years out of it. And he's got his game coming up Saturday, which I'm buzzing about. But like, for me, I just feel he's such a lost talent in terms of working with young people or being a player or having the impact in a game much bigger, because he is one of the most knowledgeable people about in terms of football. Every quiz question he'd like win it, and I'd be like, what? And that's because he's just always like been into it. And over the years I've sort of lost that quiz knowledge because I'm like, right, I'm focusing on the game a bit more in detail than just having this general football knowledge. I'm like, right, well, when kids are like talking about FIFA and stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't have a clue anymore. And it's quite sad because you're like, oh, I remember having that conversation with my dad or something when I was younger. I was like, what? And now we're sort of getting older. We're like, oh, I don't have that knowledge.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like my one mate, Mike, is crazy. Like he can just recite every Champions League win ever in order and year. And I'm sat there like, what? There's me talking about, in possession, out of possession, transition and all this, and then he's there talking about factual things that have happened, you know what I mean? And it's like, God, I used to be like that. I used to know players that were playing in, the Bosnian second division that look up and come in, and now I've got it all because I'm focusing on philosophies and things. And your mindset changes, doesn't it? And there's only so much space you can store stuff in your brain. And yeah, just constantly find myself constantly just, even at work now, when I get a chance, there's a podcast or something like these podcasts, hence how I got into them. I'm always looking for stuff now, and it becomes almost an addiction, doesn't it? An obsession, but a positive one, And yeah, I've got a couple of friends that I think they're still playing and they're still trying to play as hard as they can, but I'm hoping that eventually they'll come around and kind of be back with staff for me one day, or maybe I'll be there back with staff, who knows? But hopefully just get into it and give back a little bit. I'm like, they've had the best part of 30 to 35 years, of football given to them, and I'm like, just give it back. Like you took so much, give it back, because there's going to be that kid that's just like you that wants that opportunity. Give them the platform to play, especially these days, because there's way more distractions off the pitch with PlayStation, Xbox, Netflix, all these things. Try and encourage them to go out and experience it for themselves, not watch someone else do it.
Absolutely, and that's the sad reality of things, where there are, more accessible things like your Netflix, like, your Xbox, your games consoles, and just YouTube and things like that, and kids are not half interested in terms of football or sports, and that's why there's a decrease in it, and unhealthiness and well-being issues, etc. But it's great because, as you say, you could then lock that one kid. I remember when we set up the club, we decided to utilise a local primary school, and I was there the one day and I was carrying through goals. I set them up. I had a couple of kids off like quite a very deprived estate. The primary school sort of enclosed around all the houses so they can see you. There's a park there. It's literally like a war ground, because it's like you don't really go over there. It's not the nicest of areas, but these kids have got literally next to nothing. And this one boy was watching me put up the goals, and his eyes literally lit up. He's like, football goals.
Like
he's like, who are you? I was like, oh, we're a football team. We're setting up. We're going to be using the score. And I wrote down on a bit of paper I had in my pocket. He's like, can I take it to mum and dad? I was like, yeah, take it home. And then ever since he's been back, he has a very typical background. He's what you would call a BAME, so he's black ethnic minority, very deprived in terms of the background and the social domestic, and we literally had to buy him kit and everything like that. And his parents know all that, and they're very appreciative. Like mum and dad were saying, "Thank you so much," texting, and we've literally unlocked this kid who literally had nothing living on this estate to being part of a team. He then has a kit. He's playing football because he loves it. He's actually learning in terms of how to play with a team, how to be with, and he is such a good player. He's like Diaby, who played for Arsenal. He's just long, he's leggy, he can dictate midfield, and he just runs and he scores. And I'm like, he's such a natural talent, but with a bit of nurturing and coaching, he's going to be such a great talent. But it's that impact by just setting up that one goal. I've attracted one kid, and then I'm like, right, I've unearthed a gem, and I'm not going, right, I've got the next David Beckham here, how much can I get? I'm going, do you know what, kid, you've got the platform now. I'm so glad like I could impact your life in that way.
Yeah, and it's not just, people, we all think, like you just said, that some people, coaches go, oh yeah, here we go, we've hit the millions sort of thing. But it's not that. It's the skills they learn away from it, because, he might have, again, not the parents' fault, but he might have gone into the wrong crowds, get the wrong morals, get the wrong, the wrong sort of, personality, so to speak. That isn't him as a person, but it's just you're affected by your environment. You are a product of your environment, and if you're giving him that positive environment, working as a team, working with people from maybe middle class, but I don't know, obviously the story, but working with people coming from different backgrounds and stuff, he learns better habits and becomes a better person in general. So it's not just the football side, like we talked about earlier. It doesn't stop from the first team player being a human. These kids are humans too, and actually they need more nurturing than anybody, on and off the field. And I think it's fantastic that you did that. And I can't, I was the same. I didn't get football until I was like 9, 10, if I'm honest, but I wasn't really interested. And then the one time I saw someone kicking a ball into the goal, I was like, Mum, can I have a go at doing that? And then she went over and said, can you join? And that's how it happened for me. So, it's crazy really how much of an impact this game has had worldwide, but equally just in them small communities like you talked about.
No, I completely agree. And that's what the game does for you, and that's why I've been so lucky to sort of do community coaching, grassroots coaching, academy coaching, so I can sort of have that mix and balance right across it. And it's great to go, right, what can I bring from the community in terms of grassroots to unlock that, and then how can I progress players into the academy if that's part of their journey, or how can I help players who want to come out of the academy back into the grassroots or just into the community, because everyone wants to play football for different reasons, whether they're with just mates kicking that ball around, because you might say, can I have a go of it? And then, you as much as you want to be a professional footballer, if you didn't have the mindset of going, right, train, and you just end up loving it, then that's naturally what was for you,
Yeah, definitely. And I think, just to throw a question back to you, it's a little bit off topic, but it does kind of come in. I find it's harder to motivate the younger players than the older players in my squads so far. So I was just wondering to you, because this is the age range that I'm struggling with, 16 to 19. Do you find there's a lot of need to motivate them on match days, or do you feel they're bringing that kind of motivation themselves?
No, I can see that massively. So with the older players, the 19s who are experienced and been within that system, they're very much like, this is match day, this is how it needs to go. We're very organised, they'll be there with their kit. And some of the younger ones, I'm looking at, tapping them on the shoulder going, did you just wake up? Because you can just see it in the changing room, they're like half asleep. And I'm like, on match day, you should absolutely be buzzing. So when they're in training, it's like, right, they're really up for it. But then when it comes to match day, I'm looking around the change room. I'm like, some of these boys just look like they're all right for a game of football, not like they really want to play it. So I do see that motivation in the younger players that does lack. But it's something that I'm really building upon in terms of where they haven't had that on their journey, and it's been part of that environment as you spoke. And I really love that you say you're a product of your environment, because they've obviously become part of an environment where a match day is turn up, do your game, and you're sort of going to go home. There's no real like warm up. This is the timing. This is how we're going to play. This is how we're going to set up. This is your role. That's that role. These are the players who are going to speak up. This is what I expect. So now we're starting to come into them. It's like, right, you need to have that urgency when you come in the change room. I want you to be like this, kit straight on. You listen to the instructions. We get out. We do our. So it is that sort of system that we are creating, very disciplined, that is now increasing their motivation. They know that expectation. For me, it's where these players haven't had that over the years, and you can only do it by instilling your principles and those standards with that discipline over time. So it's a real interesting concept where you might say, all right, they're struggling with that. Or I think with what the dynamics that you're going to create in that those principles within that environment, that's how you start to unlock it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, because I do, just for me, all the research that I've done in terms of culture, so I believe culture plays a big part in football.
Massively.
Down to the local area. That player that you've got off the estate will be a lot hungrier than someone that's probably been just used to be the mum and dad taking them to them sessions, because they want it more, because they appreciate it. But equally, I think in English football, or I'm sure Welsh football as well, the same. Because we're routined into 9-5 jobs, we go to school at the same time, we do everything, we eat at the same time, we sleep at the same time. I think you need to have consistency in your sessions and also in your culture, that it's the structures there that's the same every week, because that's what we're used to in life. If that makes sense. Whereas I feel like if you say went to Spain and coached, of course I can only go off what I think. I don't know. I haven't done it, but it feels very much to me like if you try to have that same kind of consistency and structure, the Spanish players probably wouldn't thrive as much because they're not used to it. To then work kind of. Of course, they have to work, but then they have siestas and stuff, so their day's broken up and they eat whenever they want to eat. That kind of thing. If that makes sense.
No, I completely get it, and I love this. And this is why we're not just having a conversation. Because for me, I've got like all these things that I'm listening in my head now, and I'm analysing. I'm like, say this, say that, do this, and I'm like, right, what's Phil saying that I can unlock here, or right, what can I pinch on? Because I'm doing a module right now in university, which is HRM and changing people. So it's all about people dynamics, relationships, how that works in an environment, how we change that culture, how we really unlock people, and we're talking about activities in terms of engagement with workforce, for example. So it's right, how do we engage a workforce? So how do I engage my team? Do we put activities on such as going out at Christmas and engaging with them? How can we do sort of concepts like that? So I love that we talk about people and how we can really get through them, and it's great that we talk about that change. And we bring about change in terms of people and what we want to really do with them, and it's great because I'm seeing that now where I am changing that culture, I'm having that impact upon it. So and that's what I'd love to do, is sort of go abroad and do something a bit different, because essentially as much as we have the principles, we have the disciplines, we have the expectations, and we have this consistency which we need at times, and it's great to have that consistency. You might go, right, they need to do this because otherwise if I do this week, this next week, that the week after, then what real impact has week 1 had on week 3, for example? So if we do the same things over 3 weeks but there are progressions within that, then the competency is going to increase. But there are times when I wish I could have that freedom where, right, we're just going to do a bit of ball mastery, go off, have a bit more freedom, less structure. And it is difficult when you coach younger players, because you see parents looking at you going, oh, they're just kicking the ball around. You're like, nah, it's that freedom they're enjoying. And I always have like Ronaldinho in the back of my head, always playing with a smile, and just the way he floats through players with the ball. And I want players to look like that rather than being robotic. And I remember setting up a session once, and he literally had to be really creative, running through the cones, changing directions, quickly whipping through. Once they're out the cones, then they have to hit a shot really quickly. But the players were like, right, I'm going to run in this direction, I'm going to cut across, and then I'm going to shoot. And it was just really robotic to just stand back and watch. I'm like, well, because these players have no real creative imagination, and that's something that I focused on for years, was like, right, why are we lacking creativity in teams and players, and why are they not able to apply that within training and games? And for me, that is still something I'm trying to find an answer for, and it's a real interesting concept, but I love that you say that, because, and I'm seeing it now in education as well, everything in Britain is starting to be more geared towards this robotic element of, right, we have to perform, we have to do this, and this is why I love that module, because I'm like, right, one day I want to be leading an organisation, whether it's football or not. Then do I want my employees to be working 9 to 5? Do I want them sat behind a desk? Can I get them out doing activities during the day? And that's what I really look forward to doing, is how can I apply that to football? So I love that you've done research into it, because it is true. Sometimes we're like, right, this is what the coaching course says we have to do, so we must go out and do it. Well, no, we do it. We pass the course. We might never use that again because it doesn't work, or we've had a complete different thought process. If every coach thought the same, then we would never have Pep Guardiola, never have Mikel Arteta, we'd never have Jose Mourinho, and so on. So we'd all just have a load of Roy Hodgsons, for example.
Yeah. The reason I do the research is because I'm my friends will say this. Once I want to do something, that's it. I'm doing it, and like the reason I'm doing my research is because I feel that I always felt that the culture reflected the teams growing up. I used to watch the Brazil teams. I used to talk about Ronaldinho. How do you not want to watch that? It's unbelievable. But it's interesting once you dive into that research. It's like, the Brazilian coaches, the Brazilian version of Luca, down in Rio de Janeiro, that's doing his teams and that. He sat there in the podcast going, okay, yeah, I'll put the cones out, and all they do is all these flicks and that, but I don't see any sort of system of play or pattern. They just keep doing random things all the time. We need to make them more into constructive way of doing things. It's interesting that we see that in our culture, British footballer, the weakness is a lack of creativity, but they're going in Brazil, well, actually, we don't have enough organisation. And I think it's so crazy to think it's the exact same game. 22 players, 2 goals, 1 ball, and yet somehow they're using our strength is their weakness. You know what I'm trying to say? And all the other, you know, look at Spain right now. They're going through a massive overhaul of where they were back in the early 2000s, where they were dominating with the tiki-taka, and now they're looking at the tiki-taka going, well, it's not working. So how do we develop this and say, right, we need to be more penetrative? You know, you looked at the World Cup, they were struggling to score goals. Well, why are they doing it? Well, they've got 8% of the ball, so how are they not scoring goals? So I just find it so crazy that, you know, you can have this culture that we've grown up in and the style of football that we've gone in, we've developed in as players and as coaches, and now, you know, we've got the same 2 versions of us in another country. It's reversing that around, if that makes sense.
No, I absolutely get it. I remember being at Newport County and our head of coaching was Spanish. I remember just doing a coaching session in front of him, and he used to appraise all of our sessions, and he just used to like have these sessions with us like we're doing now and talk about our sessions, and that's something that we never used to have at County. And he was like, right, I want to talk about sessions, and this is where sort of bits of this has stemmed from, because he sort of unlocked that sort of mindset and the way of thinking, and he was like, right, in Spain we do this, we do that, you see a lot more attacking and this and that, and he always used to talk about Atletico Madrid, and he was massive on it, and it was just great to sort of change the way that we were used to playing. And I know when I first started at County, our academy manager was like, right, we're going to work on big pitches, always big pitches. And I remember the one day going in, setting up a really small pitch. One of the parents rang up the academy manager straight away and complained because we were using quarter pitch. I was like, I don't want half a pitch for this. I want to play, they're like under eights, man. I don't want like these players running back and forth playing like an 11v11 game. So he complained, and the academy manager was like, what, really? And then a new academy manager came in, and we went from massive 11v11 pitches to 5v5, 7v7 pitches, and that's where all the training still is, even though he's gone and now 2 new academy managers have come in. They're still playing on smaller pitches, and I'm like, why are we doing that when I was a coach? He's like, right, quicker thinking, quicker reaction time. The players are going to get more touches, going to be more movement. They're going to then have to apply that on an 11v11 pitch. Then how do we support them in that process? And it was such an interesting concept that changed the complete dynamic and working profile of the academy at the time to where they went. It was great to sort of be part of that change and see the way we coach players.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, it's amazing that parents are just, you know, I mean, I go down to a lot of our youth games on the Saturday because the women's is on a Sunday, you see. So I do like Sunday morning men's, and then so my whole Sunday is just football all day. You know, I get up at like 8 and then I don't get in until 6, 7 at night. Sometimes it depends how far away the women are playing because we play at regional level, so we can go quite far away, and I'm sure you had that experience yourself. But yeah, it's just like amazing how outside influences just see something, one snippet of a massive season's worth of stuff, and make this massive judgment on it. And it's like, oh, hold on, you don't see the work and the reasoning behind it. Oh, we've got an issue if you want to come and ask me and say, right, why are you doing this? And I'll go, well, the reason is we're working on the short passing because the players need to develop it. It's a fundamental skill. If they don't have it, they're going to struggle when they're older. This is why we're doing it. This, and this. And if they then disagree, still, I'll go, okay, that's your opinion. You take over the team and you do better then. You know? Yeah. But it's just so frustrating when they make that knee-jerk call. I'm like, God, just give me a chance. Let me get my feet under the table, so to speak. Let me do my work. And if you don't think it's good enough at the end of the season, by all means, then we can talk about it. But it's just I just find it so crazy how people make these judgments. And don't get me wrong. You know, I'll never forget being 14 years old watching Martin O'Neill at Aston Villa and questioning why he's playing Craig Gardner at right back. You know, yeah, I've done it once upon a time, but I like to think that once I got to 18, 19, 20, I started to go, actually, now I understand it a bit more. It's from kids, young kids, no problem with them knee-jerk. You know, when I was that age, everything felt like the end of the world. It's just really frustrating when adults are doing it. It's so frustrating.
Of course, no, and that's the great thing. When the players are working with you and you create that way with them, they're going to understand what your expectations are, and they're going to be like, all right, I understand the system, and because they develop that game intelligence, and that's what they'll be. They'll understand, all right, Phil's doing this, oh, he's playing me there, and all right, I get it, it's for the purpose of the team. And one of our better players when we were under 12s, he started off as a holding centre mid, and he was a natural to it. It's not like we coached him there. He'd done really well. He had like all the time on the ball. He just opened up the game. He controlled it. And then by the time he was in the 12s, he was right back. And that's because he dominated right back position. He was opening balls up from the right-hand side. He could play out from the back. And he became one of our better assets. And he just evolved over time, being one of our best assets, but just moved in a different position. And it was like wicked to see, because you're like, right, that's a coaching masterclass. But and that comes back down to it. You're not going to win everyone over. And sometimes no matter how hard it is, you will lose these players and parents. But if they think the grass is greener, I can tell you what, it's not always greener on the other side. Because I had one parent, which I can really think of, he questioned me because I played his son from a striker to a CDM holding. I was like, he can play the ball, he can open up, he can still score. He's bombed through these players right through centre mid, and he's gone on and scored. So I said, he's a much bigger asset than just sitting up top, receiving the balls, scoring 5 goals every game. And like he said, and then we lost him at the end of the year. 5 years have now passed. He's been at the other club. He plays in CDM.
Yeah, mate, that sums it up. And it's funny because, Coach Luca makes his decision to put someone from CDM to right back, and it's an issue. But when Jurgen Klopp does it with like Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool, takes a central midfielder who's played there for 16 years or 15 years, whatever, youth football, puts him at right back in first team football. It's genius. He's the best thing since sliced bread. Because he's German, it means it makes sense. But a British coach at grassroots, apparently that's not okay. Well, why? It's still football, still relevant, and that's it. I look, I've got a coach, Kate, like I said, she's the under-15s manager. Obviously, last year they were under-14s. They won 3 trophies. They won every single game, didn't drop a point, and yet there were parents still took their players out of the team because they felt like the team should be doing better. They should concede less goals, score more goals. And I was just like, that has got to be the craziest scenario I've ever seen, that someone could be that successful. And I know her philosophy isn't all about winning. Yeah, she wants to win, but she's trying to develop these players and clearly done a very good job because they've won all these games, and yet parents are still complaining, saying this isn't good enough, we need more goals, we need less conceded. And I'm just sat there as a coach going, this is absolutely mental.
Absolutely.
I just don't understand it.
And that's what it comes down to. Sometimes not everyone's going to unlock or understand the way that we have that thinking process. And that, as you said back at the start of it, is where do we want to see the game evolve, or where are we going to see the game grow? And it's not always been the same. It's changed over the 10 years between the next 10 and how that's going to look. And I know that's a big question on every coaching course right now, is how is the game going to look in 10 years? And I'm like, I remember sitting there on my B going, how do I want the game to look in 10 years? So I've never really thought about how I want it to look. I've always gone, right, this is my philosophy. And I'm a huge Jose Mourinho advocate, big fan. I just can't measure any other manager towards him. He is like the god for me, right? He can't put a foot wrong. And some games are like, right, he's at AS Roma. He's got all these players, Dybala, Timmy Abraham, Zaniola, and Belotti, all these, and he's still playing the same system as he was 10 years ago. Okay, he's held his principles, he's had some success, but they're like 5th or 6th on the table. I'm like, right, all these players, and you're winning games 1-0, 2-0. Okay, he's getting clean sheets, scoring, goal difference. But I'm like, right, look at Pep Guardiola. His teams are attacking, they are getting forward, they are, and and I'm like, I'm a huge advocate of him, but I'm like, oh, he hasn't adapted, he hasn't moved forward, and I'm like slowly having to tell myself the game has evolved.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like Mike Beale's someone that I really like. I know he's not necessarily, he's nowhere near the Mourinho level, but in terms of success, but I really think that he's kind of painting the future. He's obviously lately let me down a little bit with the lack of loyalty to QPR. Not that I'm a QPR fan, but I don't like people saying I'm going to stay and leave him, but won't go into that. But I really love how his vision of the game is, and like he talks about it becoming more like basketball, that it's going to be that end-to-end and stuff, which it already is going towards that with, when you watch your big teams play. But yeah, I think someone like Louis van Gaal, someone I like a lot. Not so much his philosophy at times, but more the way that he adapted when he was at Ajax. He played a very different way to what was the Ajax way, so to speak, but then was probably one of their most successful managers. Alongside the fact that when he went to Bayern Munich, he completely changed his philosophy and the way he played. They were way more attacking at Bayern Munich. And for me, to see that transition as a coach is incredible. Because like you say, let's be realistic. How many coaches really changed their style? Has Klopp changed much from Dortmund to Liverpool? Not really. Has Pep ever changed? 100% not. And of course there'll be tweaks in what they do, but ultimately, like you said, their philosophy is the same. And that's why I think Van Gaal is such an interesting one to kind of go and research, because how he changed and was so successful with it, it was amazing actually, and kind of not talked about enough.
No, I agree, and I started watching this film and I only got about halfway through, but it was so eye-opening in terms of why he is the way he is and how his younger years had that impact. And I'm like, right, I have to really sit down, make notes and study this documentary, because I've never really been a big Van Gaal fan because of his personality, But then when I started watching, I was like, right, it's actually starting to win me over in some ways of it, and it's such an interesting concept in terms of how he's approached things, in terms of the discipline and expectation. And I've actually got his book up there. I've never actually read it. It's like on my to read list. But he is someone that if I'm looking at people to study, he is definitely someone that I'm going to study for his personality, his character, the way he's set up, and how he's changed systems within there. Because obviously clubs have these expectations, i.e. Bayern Munich, they brought in Nagelsmann, he's German, they have a certain way of playing, but he's not dominating the league. So are they going to have to sack him and then bring someone from the outside? And it's like, right, they had Carlo Ancelotti, didn't like the way he played, so sacked him, but yeah, he's still one of the most decorated managers ever. They weren't really happy with Pep Guardiola, but again, likewise. It's like, right, you're staying still to your systems, but are they really progressing you at the same time?
Yeah, and I find that amazing because I think we get bogged down in the tactical side of the game and how people set up. And don't get me wrong, I think it is hugely important. I'm a massive tactical mind. When I say tactical mind, I'm orientated in coaching in tactical. I'm not saying I'm some sort of world class manager. I'm not, but I mean, when I coach, I am more tactically and shape orientated. But what I find, a name you mentioned there, Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, he is one of the greats, no doubt in my mind. But I don't particularly know what his style of play per se is. He seems more to me like a typical old school manager, man motivator. Does that make sense? It's so interesting how you'll see someone like Pep and Arteta that's so obsessed on the tactical side of you need to be here, you need to be there. So almost robotic, like you talked about before, like it's already predetermined. But Ancelotti teams feel so much more like they really want it more than the opposition. And I find that incredible battle between two sort of practicality to motivation. It's just amazing to see that. Even down at grassroots, we all look at them and see these top guys doing it. But even, I see, our league sometimes, I can tell that, a certain side, like centrally, you can tell that they go more off the motivational side than tactical. They're quite loose in how they do things. And then you'll go play, say, Coventry, and they're like, tactically, you go here, you overlap here, and you can hear the coach talking about it. And it's just amazing, really, how the game is played that way. And I think that's what makes football so good. And I think there's the romantics of football that, like we talked about, your Peps and that, they're the romantics. They want to see the perfect attacking style. And then you've got your people that are much more practical, like your Van Gaals and stuff like that, and Mourinho, who is obviously your hero. He is definitely more practical than, and I'm not saying, of course, some of the most magical moments over the years, like Jose going down touchline at Old Trafford, will stay with me till the day I die, you know what I mean? And I've got no reason to love Jose other than the character that he is. But yeah, I just find that so amazing that how you can have these styles that come up against each other.
Absolutely, and it's great that they do have these different styles and what we're talking about there. And I know I just had a great thought process, and they sort of just wangled out because I just was just ingrained in terms of what you were listening, and I was like, oh, that was a great concept there. That was it, yeah. And when we say about man management in terms of Carlo Ancelotti and being tactical, in terms of Pep Guardiola, I looked at our game Sunday and I'm like, right, I didn't really change a lot in terms of our tactical approach. We went into a really low block. We had literally bare 11. We had one sub on the bench. He was half injured. He's not one of our most technical players, and we didn't really have the personnel to go out all attacking. So we sat in a low block. We stopped them. We prevented them. And the only reason we conceded is because our player stepped off him, and the player had the time and space, and they literally just went bottom corner, and they'd done the same second half. We were 2-0 down. But then they tried to be clever in terms of a tactical change. They went 3-5-2 and thought they were going to overload us and get more goals. But it backfired because it led space where we just started to move the ball forward a little bit more and step up. And we just exploited them and bang, 1-2, 2-2. And then they went back to their shape straight away. So it's like, right, you've actually overthought that, and it's actually cost you because we remained true to our principles. But I'm like, right, what real tactical changes did I do? Did I go, right, I seen them do a 3-5-2, so I might go, right, 3-5-2 myself and match him, or I might try and exploit that by having an attacking outset myself, or we go on 2-0 down, I need to pack the bus and just go, right, hold it at 2-0 rather than 4-5 against local rivals. But then when I come down to it, I'm like, right, I'm not a huge tactical manager. I'm more of a people management. This is our style. How can we try and adapt it? Whereas my assistant coach is going, right, they need to do that, or they could do this. And over the years, I've sort of gone, right, less on the responsibilities a bit more, because I'm like, right, if I get my people to do what I can get them to do, then I don't need to really give them all this information. And that's where maybe coaching youth football, I've had to take some information out, and then other times when I've coached some higher quality players, and I'll put loads of information in because I need to enable them. And it's finding that right balance. So it's not always the same right across the board. Sometimes it's like, those moving music dials. One might go up, one might go down, and coaching's again right down to the person ourselves in terms of our own journey, for example.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, I'm really bad for something. A bad trait that I have is overanalyzing something. Like you
Mm.
talked about there. I spend 6 hours in the week working out what players we've got available and what formation we need to play with those players. For example, 6 hours of that, and spend 0 hours on the fact that I need to motivate these players come Sunday to do this tactical plan that I want to do. How I'm, and that's something that I've learned over the last few seasons is that the psychological is so important. Why they're here because they love the game. If you like you say, if you bog them too down in tactics, too much information, they're just going to go. I just want to play football, mate. I don't want. I'm here to play football, and of course that's relevant again to levels. The way I treat the guys on the Sunday is different how I treat the girls again on the Sunday. But in the afternoon to morning. But I still have to try and play that juggling act with both. Really, the guys still need some sort of structure, otherwise it's just going to be a mess. But it's probably going to be less structure than what I give the ladies, and equally, I probably don't need to motivate the lads as much as I do need to motivate the ladies. So yeah, it's that factor, and it's interesting that you talk about how your habits, so to speak, from youth football, how you taking them into the older ones, and like you say, I mean, let's be realistic. I'll be a bit worried if a coach is going into a 5, 6-a-side kids team and going right, we're going to play a low block. We're going to then we're going to go high press second half. Kids probably going, what you want about high press? Low block, you know what I mean? So it is really interesting, and like I said before, I'm excited to go on that journey of completely numbing it back down to just the enjoyment of the game.
Absolutely, and when we talk about that motivation, just thinking about it then when you were speaking, I think the players naturally found motivation themselves because they could have gone, right, we're on bare 11 now, subs injured, these are rivals, we're missing all these key players, and suddenly they're like, oh shit, how are we going to do in this game? Whereas I'm like, right, we are playing a low block because we have to do it, so and then we've set up, we've done really well, we just went 1-0 down before half time. But instead of having their heads down at half time going, right, oh, let's just defend second half and just make sure, they've gone, we've done really well that half, we're really proud, we're only 1-0 down. And like, it's working, let's apply it, And they sort of took the team talk away. I was like, right, they're motivated, they're going to go out there, let's apply this, and boom, 2-2 at the end of the game. And the scenes at the end of it, we were like a minute away from being 2-1 loss. And that goalkeeper ended up scoring. And it was just scenes, and all 11 of them went to celebrate together. And there was such a huge motivation and boost. And they were talking about a training Monday, and it's such a high for us. And we're going to build on that in terms of come Sunday when we're playing another local rival. But the motivation came because I didn't overload them with too much information or expectation. I said, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And now how can I manage my personnel in terms of doing this throughout the game for 90 minutes on and off the pitch? How are we going to set up in terms of, what the expectations are in terms of the change room, warm-up, and how this played out. And that's what it really come down to and was the people management on Sunday, not because I had the tactical management in that sense.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest thing that I keep saying to our players is I want you to be problem solvers. Not. I think sometimes as coaches we can constantly keep leading them, keep giving them the answers, giving the answers, teaching them this, teaching them that. But they need to start becoming self-aware and learning on the job. Like we had the Droitwich game this season, we were 3-0 down with 2 minutes to go to half time. Me and Liam were talking about right, and it was a game we were expecting to win. Basically, it's a first team environment. It is a winning environment. We're expecting to win. We're not happy with their performance. And Liam was so tempted to go in there and go mad. And to be fair, I was like, I don't blame you. They've let you down here. You know what I mean? We've done so much prep on this week. They've really let us down. And then we nicked this goal just for our time. And straight away I thought, do you know what? Let's let them sort this out. Let's let them. I said to him, we're going to give them in the changing room 10 minutes on their own, and then we'll come in for the last 5. And we just put our ears to the door and let them talk. And it showed how far they'd come from the season before because there wasn't any bitching, there wasn't any arguing. It was all just right. This is what we need to do. This is the plan. We need to work on this, girls. Honestly, it was amazing. There were people that I would never thought were leaders, but oh my god, they were coming to the fore. Like young players going, I haven't worked hard enough there. Sorry, I've let you down, girls. That's my bad. I'm going to work harder this half. And we come back to win 4-3, and oh my god, it was last minute winner. We won 4-3 second half, and it was the best feeling I've ever had. It was better than winning the County Cup, and it was only a league game, but it was just it was that moment as a coach where you felt proud that everything you've been trying to install has come off. They've done it themselves, and it's kind of like brilliant. This is the best feeling, and of course, winning last minute helps as well. But it just all added into the perfect. That went from the worst day, if that makes sense, at half time, thinking I'm gonna be so mad at work all week, to suddenly this ecstasy of absolute. It was amazing. And like you said, it was the exact same thing. Like you said, with your players, when they come into training in the next session and they're talking about it. We were talking about it for weeks. It was absolutely amazing.
And it's great when you have those moments, you can still carry them on and take things away, because, you know, that motivation or what makes a player happy, that's determined down to them, really. We have a big impact upon it in terms of, you know, if we have those expectations which are too high, and as you say earlier, listen, mate, we just want to play football. You know, we are enablers of their happiness, but realistically, they're the ones with their own control over it, you know. And if we can do everything within our power to create that, then we're going to create an even better journey for them. So, you know, it's you know, fascinating when we talk about people, and that's essentially what this has all become about, is the mindset of the player, which is so great, and how we set things up and how we look at teams. But there's so many like little things which, you know, if you know, later on I might play this back and go, right, I'm going to stop that, and I might have that, and I might have this, and I might have that.
Yeah,
and that's
same,
because
same.
there's so much to take away, and it's, you know, it's so many different concepts which I really love, and no, I just love like what you're doing and just everything where we're currently at, and it's nice just to be able to reflect on football away from coaching as well now, and just sort of be an enabler of conversations.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you've had me on. Thank you. And, you know, I'll be honest, some of the guests that you had on, I've been listening to them, I'm thinking, oh my God, these guys have got such much bigger experience and stuff than me, and I'm not sure how much value I can really add to anyone, really. I'm very much at the start. I mean, I've been doing it for 4 years, but I'm at the start of my journey, really, and I'm trying to make myself the best coach I can be as quick as I can. I know it's a long journey still. I'm still going to be doing all the hard work and doing, you know, picking up the cones. That will never stop with me, but, you know, I wasn't sure, like I said, how much value I could give, but I'm glad to hear that you took something from this, and I really appreciate your time, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, and likewise, it has been an absolute pleasure. And, you know, even though, as you say, you're only 4 years in and you were saying how much value you could bring, etc., I'm like, do you know what? I want to get him on again in like 3 weeks' time, because when you talk to people, you're like, right, we've only really scratched the surface, because if we look at it, we've covered a wide amount in terms of tactical, how we might set up a coaching journey, how you've been on it, where you're going, working with other people, adults, youngers, your outlook on the future, how we set teams up, people management, motivation, managers. And there is so much within that. But realistically, we have looked at the people. We haven't really done a tactical side. We haven't really opened up in terms of who Phil is, what his style of play is, his systems, how that has evolved. And that's what I mean. We've just scratched the surface. So there's so much more value which you have. So, you know, it's been a pleasure to have you on. And, you know, I know you've had so much, the messages which have been great. You can feel the energy within them and just how accommodating you've been, which has been great. But, you know, you've got the perfect voice for a podcast, honestly. I'm sitting there going, this is podcast material.
No, cheers, mate. Yeah, and honestly, if it's all right with you, I mean, if you've got time to have me, I'd love to come down.
No, I'd love to, yeah.
And just sitting on your session, just shadow it, because I'm just trying to get so many different experiences, and I don't mind doing the travelling and coming down. So obviously, I'll speak on Twitter about that. But yeah, thank you, mate. I've learned so much from this, and it's just been amazing, really. So thank you, and I'd love to come back on. But if you ever got a free spot, just let me know. Just drop me a DM. 100% always love to just have this conversation again. Really, it's not. I know it's a podcast, but to me, it just felt like two coaches, you know, mutual understanding, and just bouncing ideas off each other. And I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Again, that's what it's been about. You know, I got questions, I got a structure. I know you've had some questions where I've seen you glance down, but like realistically, I haven't really even covered any of the questions, because I'm like, you just end up having a conversation. I'm like, right,
yeah.
I don't really like that. I could do research, right, and I could have said, right, can I have a bit more? But I'm like, right, I'm going to leave that, because I could just pull this off and pull that off and just see where it goes naturally. And that's why it's been so great, because I've sort of went in with a blank mind, but I'm like, right, what could I get out of this? And there has been no like topic planned on this, and you know, in a couple of weeks, if we said do it again, I could go, right, let's do it around this. And but it's great that is the way it's worked out. But no, it's an absolute pleasure. You know, I'm going to drop you a DMs in a bit, and we can arrange about getting on, etc., and coming down and then whatever. But no, absolute pleasure, mate, and thank you very much from me.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Thanks so much. Again, echo everything you just said back, really. I don't want to repeat it too much, but yeah, I wanted to throw you questions, because when you've got someone that's going through, like you said, you're going from youth to adult, I'm going from adult to youth, it's kind of like we're passing each other, and it's like, well, let me know what's going on that end, so I'll know what I'm coming into. So yeah, thank you, mate. Really appreciate your time.
No worries at all, but I'll mess you now in a bit.
Wicked, love it. All the best, mate.
And you, nice one. Cheers.
See you later.